All right, thanks again for listening. This week, we are joined by Delano head coach Terry Techam. Coach, thanks for joining.
Hey, Brett, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
How we get started, I know you mentioned you've listened to a handful of these, coaching Wikipedia page. So obviously you're at Delano now. You've had success with your state championship here a couple of years ago. But let's talk about where you're from, where you played, and your coaching career that led you to the Tigers.
Yeah, first I just want to say thank you for doing this. I've listened, like I said, I've listened to numerous of them. You've had some unbelievable coaches out there with some very good ideas and, guys that really work hard just to make basketball better in Minnesota. But for me, I grew up in Shakopee. Probably the passion for coaching started with my parents. I remember Shakopee way back in the day was only a town similar to Delano, 5,000 or 6,000. And there was I remember getting involved in youth basketball. My dad had heard about these tournaments and stuff that traveling go on. And we went to one, he found a guy, and he basically started the Shakopee Basketball Association. And my parents ran the Shakopee Basketball Association for probably 40 years. Once I left Shakopee and was out of playing, they still ran it. But I think that was more because he started with, we were going to tournaments and he'd pay for everything out of his own pocket. And hopefully he got reimbursed. He'd tell all the families to kick in $10, and most of them did, but you always probably had one or two that, maybe forgot or for whatever reason didn't. But they took the Shakopee basketball program from no traveling team. By the time they were done, they were having 3, 4, 5 traveling teams per grade. So that's kind of where my basketball kind of started. Like I said, I played at Shakopee. I went to St. Olaf. I played basketball my freshman year. Kind of hurt my knee that summer. Again, not sure I was good enough to really play that much in college anyway, so I didn't do any basketball my sophomore year. But my junior year of college, all of a sudden the 10th grade position opened up in Shakopee, which was about a 45-minute drive from Northfield. So my coaching career started when I was a junior in college, coaching 10th grade basketball at Shakopee. I was lucky enough for 5 years to work with my high school coach, who was Coach John Anderson, who was a great guy. Still comes out and watches Delano play once or twice a year. Very supportive. And then once he retired, I was fortunate enough to work with Coach Kuyath, who anybody who follows Minnesota basketball is aware of. He's had a phenomenal career. Not only when he took over, he was actually my high school baseball coach and my 10th grade basketball coach when I played. But I was lucky enough to work with him for 12 years. One thing I learned from him, he was very good about delegating to his assistants. I think my last 7 years with him, we basically did the offense and defensive thing. He let me be totally in charge of the defense and, really never second guessed anything. Just like an assistant, he'd make some suggestions. And if you agreed, if you wanted to do them, great. If not, he did not say you had to do it. So he gave me tons of responsibility. And in those last 7 years of working with him, we went to the state tournament 6 times. And my last year at Shakopee, we actually won a Class 3A state tournament. In a year, we went 31-1. So after that, Coach Kuyath is a diehard. Obviously, my dream would have been since growing up in Shakopee, I'd have loved to have been the head basketball coach at Shakopee at some time. But Coach Kuyath loves his basketball. You knew he was going to keep going. So I decided I want to kind of venture out on my own, see if I could do what it takes to be a head basketball coach. So we moved to Malacca. I was the head coach at Malacca for 2 years. We liked my family. We liked the small town, but it was a little farther away from the cities than we would have probably liked as a family. So my wife got a job in Delano. I actually teach in Orono, even though I coach at Delano. So I got a teaching job in Orono. And we kind of put basketball on the back burner for a year. So I actually just coached like junior high basketball in Orono for a year. Then Coach Longstreet was the head coach at Delano. I helped him for a year. And Coach Longstreet loves coaching basketball, but some of the administrative stuff that kind of goes along with being a head coach was not his favorite thing. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to resign and hopefully you can get the position and I'll be your assistant. So that worked out. And then I've been the head coach at Delano for the last 11 years, and really enjoy it. It's been a great experience so far. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
I mean, that's crazy starting at driving at college, 45 minutes commute from Northfield just to coach, and then 17 years as an assistant. That's a lot. That's a lot of work. And when you took over Malacca, and this is maybe for a target audience of like 5 people here. So you had my assistant coach, Dylan Nauman, was one of your players.
Yep.
So I just need like a 1-minute summary about how awful it was coaching Dylan as a high school player.
It wasn't awful. Dylan was one of the hardest working players I ever coached. I don't think he would be offended, but he was probably limited with his offensive skills. But he made up for it with his smarts and how hard he worked to get the best of his ability.
So you mentioned that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And it's been a thrill just to watch him, get back into coaching, working with you, and I just know how hard he works at it and how much he's grown as a coach.
Yeah, we pretty much have that same sort of model. He runs our defense, and I let him do whatever he wants to do, and I'll give some advice, but the defense is all his, and I take the offensive side of it. Now, you mentioned
I can see why he's on the defensive side.
I've watched him teach shooting drills. I can see why he probably was a sub 5 points per game guy for you at Malacca.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned that you were an assistant coach for 17 years. I know you have Coach Longstreet has coached with you since you've been the head coach at Delano. And so, what are some ways what things that you learned at Shakopee that you have now asked of your assistants, and how you empower them to take ownership of your current program?
Probably the biggest thing I learned from Coach Kuyal is to give kids the opportunity to play. When I was at Shakopee in the summer, we would play, we would probably play 70 to 75 games. And we played every team camp, and the school was big enough that even if you didn't have all your best guys, you could still have a pretty competitive team to go there. But he just was always big on, let's get our guys playing. This was kind of back before AAU. It was there, but wasn't as big as it is today. The other thing, obviously, is to give your assistants, responsibilities. And I'll be honest, that was tough when I first took over and was a head coach. You wanted to be in charge of almost every little facet of it. So I've gradually kind of given my assistants more room. And actually last year, Jason Monkey is also one of our assistants. We were lucky enough to be able to have 2 varsity assistants. So both Jason and Jamie have been head coaches. Jason Monkey was a head coach at Sauk Center, probably 10 to 15 years ago. So we broke practice up where we rotated who was in charge. Everybody took a day. So Coach Monkey would be in charge for a day, Coach Longstreet would be in charge for a day, and then I would be in charge for a day. And I think that really worked to keep things fresh. Everybody, sometimes you get stuck into your certain drills that you like, where each coach kind of had their day. They were have a different voice, and it was less stressful probably as a coach just to be able to step back and go, I'm looking this as more as an assistant coach rather than having to run everything.
I really like that. That's definitely something that I want to try to install. I really like, because you make a good point that as coaches, you guys probably have similar drills that you all want to run, but you all probably have drills that you like more than the other one. So I think that gets that, and kids can probably feel that fresh voice and change of pace, but also cycling through different drills, because I know I get into a habit of kind of doing the same drills maybe on every Monday or whatever the case may be. So I really like that. I really like that idea. How did you feel like the kids took that?
Oh, I thought they loved it, because everybody, had their different thing that they like to emphasize. So it was good for those kids to see those and do drills a little differently. Once we got into the season, usually I would take, if we were playing games on Tuesday, Friday, I would do Monday, Thursday. So we had a little more game prep in there. Coach Longstreet would usually do Wednesday, and then we do practice Saturday, where Coach Monkey would kind of be in charge of our Saturday plan.
I really like that. Another thing that you have, we play each other every year. Our youth teams probably run into each other probably 2 to 4 times a year, playing in similar tournaments on the northern side of the metro here. Your youth program is a well-oiled machine. You guys are crisp at all levels. You're running the same stuff that you guys run at the varsity level. So what are some ways that, now you've done it for 11 years, so I'm sure it's probably running itself a little bit, but how did you get your influence on the youth program? And then what is your involvement like today?
Yeah, when I first started, I mean, I was Delano had some things in place, but again, just wanted to get kids more opportunities to play basketball. So when I started, I was doing the first and second grade program. We run ours in the fall. So for 2 nights a week, you're up there doing that. Running your third and fourth grade program, which started as kind of an in-house program before moving to, our fourth graders do some traveling now. Um, so you would, trying to be involved. We were lucky that we had a lot of good people. A lot of our assistant coaches have kids that are young, so they were involved coaching on top of coaching our high school. We have a Schultz family that's in town that's phenomenal with youth basketball, that they do a lot of organizing things. But again, just trying to get those numbers up where kids are playing, having fun, always trying to make sure, we're having fun. Kids like to play games. It's not, we want to use skill work and have them develop skills, but we want to play enough games where the kids are having fun and putting them in positions where they can be successful. And I usually do not tell our youth coaches what they have to run. A lot of them have chosen to run stuff that we run at the varsity. I mean, I always tell them, who knows what we're going to run when they're in high school. We could change, but if you find something that we do that fits your talent level and you think this is something they're going to do as they go older, feel free. But, when in their youth, if they want to try a different offense or try something different, and again, we stress most part of your practice at the youth level is just working on skill stuff. But I think to go back to your original question, just being involved, letting the kids know who you are, and then finding quality people that you trust to run a program, which I was lucky enough to be able to do.
Another thing that I've always been really impressed with and try to take notes from, or whenever we've had our conversations, if it's at breakdown tournaments or at fall leagues, or the few minutes we talk before when we play, is your off-season program with your guys. Talk about some of the things that you guys do in your off-season program, some of the drills that you take your guys through, and what you're on a normal year. Obviously, the pandemic has made things a little bit goofy. A little bit goofy, saying it lightly, this off-season. But in a normal situation, what does your off-season programming look like for your high school age kids?
Yeah, we come in probably like most teams 2 to 3 times a week, and we are lucky enough. We have a big activity center. So we usually have like 4 courts. We also are lucky enough between the boys and girls program in Delano, we each have 2 shooting machines. So we do share those. So sometimes we have access to 4 shooting machines. So and we probably have, so our kids will come in, a varsity type group and then a JV 10th grade type group for an hour and a half. We kind of split that up. We try to make it so it doesn't seem like regular season practice, so it's a little different, so they don't think they're back in season doing stuff. So we will go 45 minutes of skill work. Each coach will have a station, a shooting, a ball handling, some type of offensive move, whether it's a post move or, trying to work on some different move that they can beat somebody off the dribble with. So we each take our station for 15 minutes. So that's 45 minutes. Then we usually do some type of team thing for 15 to 20 minutes, whether it's defense. I found the summer is a great time to try. If you want to try a different offense, it's a great time to try it where you can play 15, 20 games with it and go, oh, that was great. We should do that. Or go, well, that was a waste of time. I thought it was a good idea. And it really wasn't. At least I didn't waste 5 games during the season doing that. And then we scrimmage for about 20 or 25 minutes. And again, just trying different things. If we have a young player that we think we can use next year, gives them an opportunity where we mix and match teams. And, it's very competitive where kids can show what they can do and if they can play at a higher level.
So who runs the drill that makes you have 6 kids from one year to the next? Who runs that one?
Well, it's definitely not me. It must be the other 2 assistants that are both 6'5" and 6'6".
That was yeah, you guys defensively were as good of a team. Haven't been doing this for a lifetime, but I've 7 years as a head coach. That was by far the hardest, and we were good. I mean, we won 25 games, won our section. We were just praying to get the ball in the hoop. There's no way we were going to be able to score versus you guys. Your length and size was unreal. So if you want to share, or maybe you just want to keep that secret, how you get all those 6'6" kids, or what's in the water in Delano, that'd be appreciated if you're willing to share that.
Just to finish up on the summer thing. So then we try and play a lot of we'll play a lot of breakdown events in the summer. When I first started, we tried to do some team camps and stuff, but in Delano, most of our guys are still 3-sport athletes. So for get kids to commit to a whole weekend for a team camp was very difficult. So we gradually found the way, over the course of time, found some different things that work. And breakdown tournaments, we'll play 9 or 10 of those breakdown tournaments as long as we can have about 8 guys that will commit to it. And that's kind of how we go about playing there. And we do get pretty good commitment. Like I said, we probably only get 1 or 2 kids a grade that are playing a lot of AAU basketball. So this gives those kids that are still 3-sport athletes a lot of basketball to be able to play in the summer. To go with your second question there with all the 6'6" guys, I've been doing this for 31 years now. I've never had a team like that where they're all 6'6". They're all very athletic. Defensively, you're right, Brett. It made things a lot easier this year. On defense, you go, well, whatever action they run, we can just switch because you're all pretty good athletes and you can guard things. It made going over scouting reports a lot easier because it wasn't, well, how are we going to defend this screen? Well, just switch it. So having size in basketball does make a difference. And then again, especially they were all very good athletes. It wasn't like one was a big guy that had to stay on the block or, was a little slow-footed. Because they're probably 3 of them will play college basketball. One's going to run cross-country track in college, and one will play football and baseball in college. So they were all very good athletes.
We talked about my assistant coach, Naman, who you coached in high school. He was at the hospital just down the street when you guys played in Princeton. He had just had his first child the day before, so he was still in the hospital, wasn't able to make the game, but he was watching the live stream on his phone, and I had about 5 texts from him at the end of the game, like about things that we're doing on offense. Like we couldn't do anything. Like it might have looked different on YouTube. I was like, man, we couldn't get anything going. And you guys were a really, really good defensive team. And like when you just had the prototypical switch 5 team with everyone, I think, being over 6'4", and everyone was long and athletic. And it was taking a step back, it was a really fun team to watch, even though we struggled really, really, really hard to score against you guys.
Yeah, we were probably lucky enough to play you early in the year. You were replacing pretty much your whole team from the year before that made a great run in the state tournament. So, it would have been nice if we could have got a chance to play again in the state tournament, but obviously there were more important things to deal with at that time.
Yeah, that's true. But maybe down the road we'll see each other again in March. Obviously, we'll keep playing our December games. But you got a nice little transition there. Talk about, like, I know you get out and scout a lot. I think a lot of coaches still, with the way technology is, a lot of coaches are relying on film exchange. I know our league has conference film exchange, so we see all of our conference games, which makes scouting a lot easier. I know you're one who still likes to get out on the road. So what do you look for when you're scouting a team? And then what are some things that you put into your scouting reports?
Yeah, I still, probably being old, I still like to see teams live. I have gotten better of being okay with watching a little more film rather than taking an hour and a half, 2-hour drive sometimes. But for us, the biggest thing is matchups of who's going to guard who. Now, obviously, this last year when we could switch some things was a little different, but matchups and looking at not just, okay, he's your point guard, so our point guard's going to guard that guy. Trying to find out what's going to be. Ideally, we want to put our best defender on the other team's best offensive player and go from there. Other big things in scouting is trying to take away teams' go-to plays, like most coaches. Most teams probably have some sets where they're going to get anywhere from 6 to 10 points off in a game. Figure if we can take those away and make them have to try and do something else to score, those are big things. And there's that fine line of how much we give players. I don't want them thinking too much out there, but I do want them to know what the other team's going to run. And it's always tough scouting. I've done this long enough where sometimes you'll go, wow, that kid can't shoot. He was 0 for 5. And then he comes out and makes 3 or 4 the next game. So part of our scouting is kind of more looking at, did the kid take 5? I mean, if a kid takes 5 or 6 threes in a game, he probably can make them. Otherwise, the coach is not going to be letting him shoot that many shots. So matchups are a big thing. From an offensive side would probably be, how do they defend certain actions? Do they hedge a ball screen? Do they switch a ball screen? And then can we add a little wrinkle to something that we already run to take advantage of that? We're not going to put in all kinds of new stuff. But if we can just say, all right, here's a normal set that we kind of run. Can we change one thing because they hedge the ball screen or trap the ball screen, or, they defend a cross screen like this that we could try and take advantage of?
That's good stuff. I'll make sure that when you try to scout us early that I completely do different things than we do, so you don't have your adjustments ready to go and not run any plays. But you know how we don't run any plays anyways. We just kind of roll the ball out and say, hopefully we score 85 points. So you're pretty good at making adjustments. I know we've been able to coach, I think, against you the last 5 or 6 years. So do you in that scouting report, do you have your pre-planned adjustments you might go to in a second half, or is that kind of something that as a staff you're talking about throughout the game?
Yeah, I think it's stuff that you're talking about throughout the game. As I've gotten older, I've learned not to be as stubborn. I think when I was younger, I was like, if I had a plan in my head that I thought was right for that, I might be a little slower to change than I should be. Where now I'm like, hey, I thought this was going to work and it doesn't work. That's not the right matchup, or that's not the right, thing for us to run that we're willing to change. Like in the section final game this year, we got off to a poor start. We were down probably 19-7 early in the game. And we kind of changed a little bit what we were trying to do on offense and changed 1 or 2 matchups that kind of helped us get going in the beginning of that basketball game.
So offensively, you've kind of adjusted throughout, the 6 years or so that we've been playing. You kind of were running that ball screen continuity. Then when you had Calvin, you're running more of the spread ball screen type stuff, and you also have your your bread and butter with your 5-out. No, before we play you guys, Dylan pulls out the old Malacca paper copy playbook he has. I think some of the calls are still the same, so we try to use that. It doesn't do crap for us, but we at least think it makes us feel a little bit more prepared. So talk about your offense philosophy, and then just your willingness, like you mentioned, coaching for 31 years. I think that's really impressive that you're willing to switch things up from a year-to-year basis and you're flexible with that. So talk about what goes into that decision-making process when you're changing up your offenses from one year to the next.
I think you're trying to figure out your play to your player's strength. Like I said before, I think the summer is a huge time to try some things, where you got a bunch of games and you can try different things and see how they go. Ideally, we just like to run motion. When I first got there, we ran motion. When I first went to Malacca, we tried to run motion, which was good, but it was also a struggle. The kids hadn't played a lot of basketball, so you're going, oh, we don't beat somebody off the dribble, or we're not the best shooter. So we had to run some more set plays just to try and get our better players some shots. So we've incorporated some of that. But you're right. At Delano, I started with motion. Then we had some good guards where we did the Euro kind of ball screen stuff, and that was very effective for a few years. And then, coaching Calvin, probably one of the biggest things I learned coaching him is definitely do not overcoach. Just let him play. And we went to dribble drive because he kind of decided that ball screen was good for him, but that was bringing more people all in. Now you got 4 people all in a small area. So when his senior year and junior year, we started running more just dribble drive to let things spread out. And, as much as he scored, he was still averaging 9 or 10 assists where he'd find people and get people open shots. And then this last year, even being 6'6", we even threw in that we'd run some swing stuff once in a while, just trying to get everybody, if we thought we had a mismatch, being able to get them into a post. But like I said, really trying to evaluate what our talent is and what's going to put them in the best spots to be successful.
I want to build off of that state championship team here for a second. So obviously you had Kelvin, Division I basketball player who had the ball in his hands a ton, but you also had Trey Longstreet, who's now going to be a senior, correct? He's going to be a senior? Yeah. Right. And who was obviously is a scholarship level player. So how did you kind of balance that off where you want to obviously have the ball in Kelvin's hand, but you also wanted Trey to develop and grow as a basketball player who obviously this past year as a junior was your primary point guard and ball handler. And so talk about that balancing act and how when you have a really talented senior, but also a really talented underclassman, how you can still develop that underclassman while playing to that senior strength.
I think probably the best thing about that team is they were all hard workers. Calvin was one of the hardest workers in practice every single day. He could play 36 minutes the whole game on a Thursday, and Friday he's in there working his butt off. And then everybody else on that team, Keegan O'Neill, Trey Longstreet, Derek Techam, they didn't care. It never bothered them if Calvin took 25 shots and they only got 5 shots. Whatever it took to win, they knew that maybe the next night they were going to be the one that got more shots from that. So I think that was a big thing. And most of those guys were very smart basketball wise, that it did not bother them if they thought that was happening. And then Calvin was hurt, and missed 5 or 6 games, where those guys were very confident in their abilities, and we were very competitive. That year we played a lot of 4A schools, and we were very competitive against some very good 4A teams. And to think of a specific game, we played at Prior, and I think this really helped us that year. We played at Prior Lake, and Calvin got hurt right before halftime. And I think we were down 6 or 8 at halftime. And without him in the second half, we lost on a shot at the buzzer. And I think from then on, those other guys knew, and they were all confident before that, but I think that just took it to another level to know what their confidence level was. And they were ready for whatever night they needed to be, kind of the secondary score or however it worked.
So you mentioned Derek Techam, obviously your son who played on your state championship team. So just talk about what that was like. Obviously winning the state championship is great. You did it as an assistant at Shakopee, but also as a head coach, I'm sure was an amazing thrill. But talk about just being able to share that experience with your son.
Yeah, it's I would say I wish every coach could experience that. If you could do it with your son, great. But the whole experience, anybody who's ever been involved in athletics, when we won the state tournament, we came back pretty much right after the game, and a fire truck picked us up in Maple Grove, gave the kids a fire truck escort 15, 20 minutes into town. They went into the gym and it was packed for a welcome home. That I think anybody who's ever been involved in sports, I wish everybody could experience that. And then to do it with my own son was unbelievable. And like I said, the relationship my dad has with basketball, he was kind of he does a book for us. So he was right there behind the bench. And you think back to being an old guy, the many years of going to state tournaments, just watching with my dad, and then to be able to have that thrill of experiencing that was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was fun to watch a team that, isn't the usual, private or public schools that make it year in and year out. It was just really cool. I think the basketball community really got behind you guys, and everyone knows you pretty well, sees your face a lot throughout the summer. As you mentioned, you're at pretty much, if there's a breakdown tournament, Delano is going to be there. So I think it was a really, really well-supported group as well outside of Delano, just the people wanted you guys to be successful and think highly of you as a coach in your program. So it was really, I know we were all rooting for you here. As that was really cool to see. I want to go back to your team from this past year now for a second. This one's coming from Twitter, and this is a great, and I know you've done this before with teams, and this is a great question. Is you only played 5 or 6 guys at times this past year. You did that, I guess, as well with your state championship team. I think you played one kid, I think 4 minutes, and then you played the rest of the guys the entire game in your state tournament run. So how do you, first part of this, and then I'll do the second part after you answer, how do you prepare them for the conditioning that's going to take when you have, obviously most coaches have a guy or two that might play the entire game, but having a whole lineup that's going to play almost 36 minutes, how do you prepare them in practice for that?
So one thing we do practice in the morning. So some advantages of that are, if you know Delano's facility, we have a big activity center with 6 courts in it. So with that said, nobody ever sits out. So like if we do 3-on-2, 2-on-1, we'll only have 8 guys at a basket doing that. So they're never standing in line. They're never sitting out. If it's shooting drills, it's never more than 2 at a basket. If any type of, like you can do 1-on-1 different things and you got 7, 8 baskets. So there's no, I do this drill and I get to go stand in line. You do shell drill. You got 8 guys going. There's no sitting out. You got 8 guys at a different basket with an assistant coach. So I think that's a big thing to it. And then our day after, we try to not overwhelm them in practice. Once we start going, I've heard a couple guys on here talk about how they shorten practices. Like our Wednesday practice is probably a half hour of, if those years we were only playing 5 or 6 guys, our Wednesday practice is probably 30 to 40 minutes of skill work, maybe just walking through something we want to see that they were going to see on a Friday, and then lifting weights. So those kids are in and out within an hour. So we try to keep them fresh that way. And, maybe I'm getting old. I feel they're 17, 18-year-old kids. They should be able to run all day. And that they kind of know that. So it's worked. One thing with it is our kids play very confidently. When you're only playing 5 or 6 guys, they're not looking over their shoulder. There's good and bad with this, obviously, but they're not looking over their shoulder like if they make a mistake. And, probably our number 5 starter this year wasn't that confident to start the year. But by the end of the year, he's looking to score, doing a lot of things that I probably didn't picture him doing to start the year.
And then second part of that, how do you communicate that with your other guys? I know you have multiple, teams at each youth level, and you always have a 9A, 9B, B squad, JV, varsity. So how do you get buy-in from those guys who, are going to go through the grind of practice every day, but they're not really going to see the court?
Yep. I would say couple things there. One thing is practicing before school. Kids are not going to come out for basketball unless they're really committed when you got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do that. The other thing, we have very clear communication. Before the start of the season, we sit down and we have a player-parent conference with me where I tell them where I see them, what I see their role is going to be. And also, like this year, I know people, if you just come to the varsity game and say, well, we only played 5 or 6 guys, but everybody on that bench got a lot of playing time in the course of that night. We only dressed 15 this year, so there was, 8 or 9 guys got a ton of playing time in the JV game. We usually tell our seniors, we don't play seniors on JV, but if we have smaller numbers and they're great kids, we'll say, all right, well, let's find you some playing time because you're working so hard at practice, where we might have them play every other game, on a JV team. So then there's only 8 guys or 9 guys on that, and they're all getting a lot of playing time. We do have the typical slogan, the we over me, and we do talk about how important everybody is on the team, whether it's being a practice player, doing scout team. And the years we've been really good, we've had guys really buy into what their role is. Our state championship year, our scout team was unbelievable. They would come in every day excited to learn what the other team was going to do. And we told them, you're a huge component to our success. Yep. People outside of our team might not say, oh, you don't get in, no, we explain how you contribute and how you make our team successful. Even if you don't maybe get playing time in the varsity game.
Do you cut?
No, we do not have a cut policy.
And then I want to hear more about that, player and parent conference. So do you meet with every 9, 10, 11, 12th grader, every returning 10th through 12th grader? And then how long does that conference usually last?
So we just meet with our varsity guys. Okay. Our 10th grade coach will have some kind of individual talks without the parent there a couple days into practice.
Okay.
But I tell the parents, this is not really a conversation. It's not like a back and forth. They always say, I wonder what the coach is thinking. So I tell them, here's what I'm thinking. And I tell them, here's where, if we were playing a game tomorrow, here's probably what would happen. Now we practice. So there's a reason you have practices, and things could change. But if we were playing a game tomorrow, your son would be a starter, or your son's, probably going to play JV and sit on the varsity bench, or your son might be getting 5 or 10 minutes at this point right now. And they're not easy conversations all the time, but I'm just telling you here, if you want to know what the coach is thinking, here's what I'm thinking. And we do also, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've added the athletic director. We'll sit in on those meetings. So everybody's on the same page. I added the parents 7, 8 years ago because, like all coaches, you meet with your players, but sometimes what I told the player was maybe not what the player told the parent happened in the meeting. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page everybody's clear about where we're at to start the season, and then we move from there. Because, and I want to tell kids that you can have a huge impact on our team, even if you are maybe not getting in the games, but you have to buy into that. It sounds good in November to say, yeah, I can do that. But end of January, when we're practicing before school, are you still going to be wanting to get up and contribute to the team in that positive manner of being a role player or a bench guy and not maybe getting in the varsity game? And, we've been lucky the last, basically ever since I've been Delano, that we have a lot of guys that buy into those roles.
Do you feel that the parents generally leave that meeting positive, even if it's like, hey, your kid's not going to play? Or do you think that it sometimes leads to more animosity or creates animosity?
I think it's positive because they want to know where their kid's at, and they can have their mindset of where things are going to be at. The other thing, like I said, when we split up practice too, I spend a lot of time with those JV guys. Like if we're doing some scout team stuff, I'll have our other assistants work with our varsity players and do the drills, and I'll be the one to show them this is really important. That's why I'm over here working with you guys. If this is how we can help make our team successful.
That's good stuff. Yeah, I think I talked about this with Andre Phillips who's in your neck of the woods over there at Mount Westonka, and he talked about that as well. Just it's so many coaches want to stiff arm or keep parents close, but also don't want to have those tough conversations. And I think that it's definitely, I'm sure it's a time commitment, but I'm guessing that the payoff is completely worth it, because even if a parent is pissed, they're not going to be, it's the fear of the unknown. We try to talk about that in our program. I forget where Coach Nauman got that from. When they JP Nearbin or whatever, one of those guys who those culture building type guys, the fear of the unknown. I think when you take that unknown out, at least the kid can attack 6 a.m. practice. Like, all right, well, here's where I'm at. Like I'm accepting it, and they can make the most out of it.
Yeah. And I would say, just to go back to even give you more insight on it. So we have those meetings at the end of our parent meeting, and I tell them it's just going to be a 2 to 3 minute meeting at the most. Some are just a minute, like, hey, Trey Longstreet, you're going to be a starter. You're going to have a big role on this team. It'll last 30 seconds. Some, at the most are just 2 or 3 quick little things of where I feel they're at.
Full disclosure, I just want to make sure, because this is really good stuff, and I hope coaches are writing this down, because we hear so much about X's and O's type stuff, and there's so much stuff out there. But this is the stuff that I feel like I've gotten the most from in doing this podcast, is this sort of like culture and program type stuff. And this is something that I haven't really talked with any of the other coaches. And so, is this pre-tryouts or pre-first week of practice, or is this like after you've maybe had a weekend, a scrimmage or something?
So this is a week before the season starts.
Before the season.
So right now we don't have tryouts. We usually have our parent meeting the Sunday before the season starts. So it's 7 days for that kid to decide, yes, I'm happy with what coach said and I want to be a part of the team, or that gives them a week to say, this isn't really for me. It's basketball. All coaches know basketball is such a long season. You're giving up Thanksgiving, Christmas, and for Delano the last 2 years, we've practiced over spring break. You're making a huge commitment to be a part of a team. And, I want everybody to be on the same page where everybody's thinking, I don't want in January to go, this isn't what coach said was going to happen, or you get the kid's mindset. I know coach said I was going to be just playing JV, but I'm going to prove him wrong, which is great.
Last question here, then I'll let you go on, as we're recording this here on a kind of cold little Saturday morning. And maybe you might have an afternoon tea time here. Last question, like I said, then we'll get on with your weekend and on with your Father's Day here coming up on Sunday. Talk about what your practices look like. You mentioned that they go at 6 a.m. I love that. I think you get I think kids are more focused, even if they're a little tired at 6 a.m. than if they are, and they've had maybe the new girl looked at them a certain way in the hallway, and they have their AP class or this class, and they have this homework, and they have this, and maybe they had lunch at 11:30. And so talk about what your practices look like, and then the effectiveness of going at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, we actually start at like 5:45.
Oh.
But we would be a 6 a.m. team, except I have to drive to Orno, which is a 10 or 15. So any times I give you here, we'd back those all up 15 minutes if I taught in the same thing. The other thing with morning practice sometimes seems tough, but once we start playing games, we have morning practices Mondays and Thursdays. You're playing a game Tuesday, Friday. We don't make them practice before school Wednesday, and Saturday morning practices are not at 6 a.m. They're probably more in the 9 or 10 o'clock range. So probably like all coaches, here's kind of how our practice is set up. Like I told you before, we're lucky enough to have 4 shooting machines between the boys and girls program. And probably like most coaches, when kids come in to start practice, it's just a lot of standing around, taking bad shots, waiting for practice to start. So we at 5:25 to 5:40 is not mandatory, but we tell them that's probably when you're going to get your shots in. At 5:25 to 5:40, we put 2 or 3 guys on the machine, and they're getting shots up. We might have another group that's just kind of all pre-practice stuff, where we might have another hoop where you take your post guys and you want to work on some individual things. But they probably, in that 15 minutes, each kid's probably getting 100 to 150 shots up before practice even starts. And even though it's not mandatory, I think the kids kind of all realize that is an important part of practice. So I would say we get a high percentage of kids that are there to start. And then, our regular practice, probably got a little 2 to 3 to 5 minute warm-up drill. Like I said before, we can do things a little quicker just having so much space, and we're lucky enough to have 3 coaches, so that if you're doing any drill, there's never really any lines, which again helps in conditioning. And then we probably have 10 to 15 minutes of just skill work, 10 to 15 minutes of probably some defensive work, and we don't need to get into too much X and O's. I've listened to some of your other guys talk X and O's. They know a lot more about the X and O stuff than I do. Your shell drill, just how you're going to guard stuff. And then we maybe spend 5 minutes dummying some stuff, if that. But when we go, I like to do basically everything full court. We do really nothing that's just a half court thing. And one of the best drills, I know you kind of always have some favorite drills. One of mine is just to get a lot of guys involved. We'll go, let's say we're working on our man offense. So we'll go 5-on-5, but we'll put 5 guys on the wall, or, a step or 2 off the baseline. So let's say orange and black. Let's say orange is our starters. You got the black on defense, and then a black team on the wall. And let's say we'll run our offense, score. Well, that group that's out, as soon as the ball goes through the net or hits the ground or their team gets a rebound, boom, they're going down the other end. And now they're playing. So now we're working on transition defense, working on, maybe we say, you're going to run this set. See how they defend that set. And then rebound, then we'll take the ball and fast break. That other black group that was out, they'll get on the wall ready to go. So I think that helps in our conditioning, that they're just going up and down, and you go a couple trips and then maybe you stop and point out a couple things. The other thing is we'll do no out of bounds on a rebound. They're all going to hustle after a rebound, then they're just going right back down the court. So it's not like a dead ball type period.
I like that. Coach, I appreciate it. You're pretty humble. I know in our emails you said that, I must be down to the average coaches now. I think that's the furthest thing from the truth, and having you on, been a part of 2 state championships, a lot of section championships, someone that we've really, okay, this is what Delano's doing. This is what we have to do. If that's at like the youth level, that's with the summer program. We try to make it to, I think we're signed up for 6 breakdowns here. Hopefully, with the news yesterday, hopefully being able to get in the gym and playing those tournaments here come late July and August. But just from like a game philosophy and watching you guys play and watching how you guys interact with your kids, definitely a team that, we've really, more than anyone, probably emulated our stuff after. And so you can be, say you're not good X's and O's. You can say, now I'm on to the average coaches, but I think you're, one of the best in the state. And so I really appreciate you coming on, Terry. It means a lot. And I know I have a page full of notes here that I've written down.
Well, thanks for having me, Brett. I appreciate you doing this. Like I said, I've learned a lot from all those other coaches that you've listened to, and I'm sure we'll see you here in a few weeks, hopefully at some breakdown events.
Sounds good. See you, Terry.
All right. Bye.